Despite spending her life encouraging women to come out, Gloria Steinem kept silent about the trauma she had through for many years. She received terrible proposals from influential persons in the media in the 1960s. One of them attempted to impose himself on her by pinning her down. To get away from him, she bit him. There were others who, in return for one-on-one encounters, offered her employment. Some of them turned out to be predators, but she never said who they were. She finally comes clean about her silence-breaking decision at the age of 91. You won't believe what she went through until you hear the reality. Gloria Steinem came into this world in Toledo, Ohio on March 25, 1934. Rather than a peaceful hospital, she entered this world in a little trailer attached to her father's Dodge. Growing up with an ever-moving father who sold antiques was a constant source of instability for her. Ruth suffered a horrible mental breakdown just weeks after giving birth. She had been a respected newspaper reporter before. She began to have hallucinations and thought the radio was addressing her personally. Gloria had attended 12 different schools by the time she turned 10 years old. Due to her father's inability to settle down, she spent most of her time living in a car, completing schoolwork during road trips, and visiting flea markets. Finally, Gloria's father abandoned the family in January 1944 when she was 9 years old. Near Battle Creek, Michigan, a snowfall was raging. After winning $500 in a poker game, he ran away without a trace. Back in Toledo, Gloria and her mom were left to fend for themselves in a frigid house. Even though it was already designated hazardous by the city, the furnace still wasn't working. Ruth was sent to a mental institution 3 times during the years 1944 and 1946. This left little Gloria to juggle everything: taking care of her mother, paying bills, buying groceries, and trying to get to school, frequently being tardy. She learned a profound lesson during those years: the hidden ways in which women could be trapped by money and reliance. So her mom wouldn't have to wire her dad for money. She recalled collecting pennies from milk bottles. There was never any sense of stability, even for Gloria as a teenager. Her mother's health had not improved. The house was in disrepair, and they were struggling to make ends meet. The neighboring church purchased their dilapidated home in 1950, when she was 16 years old, and installed a little window. Now that she had an older sister, Gloria could move in with her and finish high school in the nation's capital. Before attending Western High School in Washington, D.C., she attended Waite High in Toledo. While there, she worked as a cashier and babysitter to pay for food and bus fare. Despite everything that was going on, she graduated in June 1952 with the honor roll. So her mother wouldn't freak out. She would hide her report card. Already, she was figuring out how to keep going even when things were tough. She attended Smith College, a prestigious institution for women, that fall on a full scholarship. Gloria was one of just 43 students to declare government as her major. On campus, Gloria helped stage a fake trial in 1953 to spoof Senator Joseph McCarthy's live TV accusations of communism. As a joke about McCarthy's baseless claims, she and her classmates displayed blank cards. Newspapers covered the event, which drew 700 people. Gloria disregarded the warnings of her lecturers that it would damage her career prospects. She earned a 3.8 GPA and graduated with honors in 1956 despite saying, "Fear should be mocked, not obeyed." A life-altering event occurred in 1957, right before a research trip to India. In other news, Gloria became a mother. In both the US and UK, abortion was considered a criminal act. However, she was helped by a doctor named John Sharp in London. He simply wanted her to keep his identity a secret and promised to let her live her life according to her heart. Such a danger was enormous. He risked 5 years in jail if discovered. Grace will always remember his generosity. Apparently, she would never have been a writer or activist if he hadn't given her a hand. It wasn't until 1971 that she addressed the matter in public. Still, it was that ordeal that inspired her to fight for equal rights for women. Throughout 1957 and 1959, Gloria traversed the entirety of India. She was delving into the lives of rural women and their contributions to society. Along with other members of the land donation movement, she slept in humble ashrams, survived on 4 rupees a day, and walked thousands of kilometers. She encountered low-caste ladies who, although working all day for a handful of rice, nonetheless shared their land with the destitute. Her perspective on gender, class, and power was profoundly affected by this. According to her notes, it was at the rural wells, where women collected water, that genuine change occurred, not in the grand halls of government. Even before the term intersectionality was coined, she claimed, looking back on her time in those places, she could see its foundations. After returning to the US in early 1956, she completed her studies at Magnum Laudem. Smith bestowed upon her a distinguished $2,400 Harvard fellowship. However, her mother's condition had deteriorated once more. Gloria declined admission to Harvard. Rather, she uprooted her life and settled in New York City, making monthly trips to Toledo to assist with medical expenses and paperwork. Article pitching was something else she did, just enough to replace her mother's roof. Her first paid post was on fancy kitchen equipment and earned her $100. She explained that decision as the moment when she understood feminism in its truest form. Politics wasn't the only factor. Family was also a major theme. Arriving in Manhattan in October 1957, Gloria had nearly nothing with her. A notepad brimming with ideas, lengthy receipts from bus rides, and almost no cash were in her possession. At a diner, she was a table server for 80 cents an hour, with tips that seldom exceeded $5 per night. Every cent counted as she paid $12 per week for her accommodation at the foreign residence. The fact that various women pay varied amounts for birth control was the subject of her first published piece. Though the payment was little at $50, it served as an initial step. Balancing platters and rejection slips, she claimed, were her real schooling. Between 1958 to 1960, she went back to India on another student grant. On this occasion, she interviewed low-income women around the nation while traveling more than 11,000 kilometers and sleeping in train stations. Carrying big bricks barely earned Dalit women 25 pies, she saw. Unheard of at that era, she noticed 2 council seats set aside for women in one Tamil Nadu community. She used a false identity to write stories and send them to newspapers. Little by little, those tales started to open people's eyes. However, her background would cause a commotion in the early 1960s. Gloria was an organizer with a youth group that sent members to anti-seat celebrations from 1960 to 1962. It came to light later that the group had secretly accepted CIA support. A magazine revealed the entire plot in 1967. Even though Gloria was aware of the source of the funding, she maintained that the agency had acted honorably and liberally. The news was shocking to many. I don't see how that could ever be associated with a future feminist symbol. Gloria had always been active in complex, strong environments, though, as this demonstrated. Her major break came in September 1962. The Moral Disarmament of Betty Coed was a piece that appeared in Esquire. Most women were afraid that if they pursued careers, it would affect their ability to get married. Gloria provided evidence in the form of surveys and statistics, including a graph showing the rapid increase in the usage of birth control. A number of readers were irate. A pink rosary and a menacing note arrived in one anonymous package. Nevertheless, her reputation was boosted by the piece. Something considerably more daring was done by her in 1963. To stay hidden, Gloria pretended to be a Playboy bunny. Under a false identity, she worked at the New York Playboy Club for 17 days. $1 per hour was her salary. She worked 54 hours a week and earned barely $18 after costume expenses. There was a lot of regulation. Each shift began with an inspection of her. She flawlessly executed the bunny dip while wearing a corset. As long as the customers left tips, they may touch everything. After taking notes, which she concealed in her sleeves, Gloria transformed the ordeal into an explosive 2-part expose. There were a lot of changes at the club when the piece sparked a media frenzy. Also, her career took a hit. Her attractiveness was perceived by many editors as little more than a story-stealing character. Gloria Steinem entered a New York City church basement in March 1969 armed alone with a notebook. Her purpose in coming was to report on the gathering, not to partake. However, her life would be irrevocably altered by the news she received that day. 12 ladies rose to their feet and horrifyingly recounted the experiences of their illegal abortions. They had led some of them to unfamiliar apartments while blindfolding them. A Brooklyn lady who paid a man $1,500 ended up bleeding for days. The women were demonstrating because the state had passed abortion legislation without consulting any women for their thoughts. As Gloria listened from her seat in the back, a change occurred within her. "My big click," she would later refer to it. She got up and spoke about her own experience having an abortion in London in 1957 when she was 35 years old. She finally spoke it aloud that day after keeping it a secret for years. After that, she became more than just a reporter. An activist, she became. In retrospect, she recalled how it felt like she'd burned the bridge behind her after crossing a border. For weeks later, on April 7, 1969, her incisive essay titled After Black Power, Women's Liberation was published in New York Magazine. She made a direct comparison between racism and sexism in it. She brought up the fact that women only made 59 cents for every dollar that men made, and that women made up only 2% of managers. There was continuous ringing at the magazine's phones. A large number of ladies wanted to know how they might become part of the protest. As a result of the outrage, some marketers vowed to remove their adverts. Her remarks, however, had already gone viral. June saw the reprinting of the piece in 42 different college publications. At last, Steinem's voice was being heard. Although she was derided by some, loved by others, she could no longer be ignored. Something tangible and useful was initiated with her assistance on July 17, 1971. In Manhattan, she and two other women used a modest donation of $20,000 to establish the Women's Action Alliance. Even though their office was only a single room, they received messages from ladies all over the nation. Concerned about prejudice in the workplace, they sought assistance. They required means of child-rearing that did not perpetuate traditional gender norms. Between 1971 and 1978, Steinem presided over the board and ensured that its members prioritized doing rather than only discussing. Their childhood development guide had been distributed in the amount of 50,000 copies by 1975. It was significant in getting textbooks to stop depicting housewives solely in domestic roles. At the same time, in January 1973, they established the nation's first helpline for battered women. Initially, a borrowed telephone switchboard was used to answer the calls. They persisted despite their lack of resources. Steinem delivered speeches at 38 rallies from 1969 to 1970. She was always on the go, popping up in various locations like municipal parks, college campuses, and Capitol buildings. As a rule, she spoke once every 10 days. She displayed job postings from the previous day at a 1969 rally held in Central Park. A guy could make as much as $160 per week, according to one. According to another, a woman would only make $90 per hour for the identical work. Gasps escaped the audience. She smirked and claimed that all she did was cook up revolutions when hecklers advised her to go home and cook. The media's tone started to shift gradually. Her BBC reporter described her as convincing rather than furious. Feminists began to gain a new perspective. Afterwards, an unexpected development occurred. Ms. Magazine released a special preview edition on December 20th, 1971. Despite its intended one-time insert status within New York Magazine, 300,000 copies were sold within 8 days. It had taken the male-dominated publishing industry by surprise. The fact that no one had ever cared to tally the audience for women's voices was proven, according to Steinem, by it. Before there was even a single complete issue, almost 26,000 people mailed in subscription checks. They were able to turn down ads that didn't fit with their message because of the success they had. Ms. was initially published as a solo magazine in January 1972. It was fearless, passionate, and without remorse. There were articles on eliminating sexist terms like chairman and welfare, as well as lesbian parenthood. Even though 7 states' retailers refused to stock it, 350,000 copies were sold that month, more than Esquire. With Steinem's help, the publishing and editing departments were staffed entirely by women. She firmly believed that men should never again be asked for permission to share stories about women. Ms. published a full-page letter signed by 53 renowned women in the spring of 1972, a few months prior to the Roe v. Wade decision. Despite the fact that abortion remained illegal in many places, all of them admitted to having one. Steinem did it while knowing it may get her jailed. A voucher was placed in the magazine for other women to sign as well. The response rate was over 10,000. After years of mounting pressure, the Supreme Court upheld abortion's legality on January 22, 1973. Something else caused a stir when it appeared on the cover of that inaugural issue. Under the title Wonder Woman for President, Wonder Woman herself was featured. The comic character's powers had been taken away by male editors, a fact that Steinem had learned about. The cover played a role in altering that. After receiving thousands of letters, Wonder Woman regained her powers by January 1973, according to DC Comics. It was the opinion of several advertisers that comics didn't belong in a serious magazine. However, Ms. saw an all-time high in subscriber growth. Wonder Woman became an icon for feminists because to that cover. In 1975, 22 nations were selling Ms. Female genital mutilation is a practice that impacts almost 100 million females. That July, it issued an 8-page investigation into the topic. It was a bold move by a prominent American publication to label it as violence rather than culture. Even though it infuriated some ambassadors, readers chose it as the year's most important story. The World Health Organization established a task force on the matter in 1977 with the support of reader contributions. Ads for diet medications and cigarettes were not shown on Ms. from 1973 to 1976. Additionally, They did away with sexist advertisements and curbed beauty blogs. This ended up costing the magazine close to $2 million. In 1980, the magazine's cover featured a Soviet feminist sans makeup, which forced Revlon to cancel their adverts. They hosted benefit concerts and increased subscription costs to keep the magazine going. According to Steinem, they would never allow advertising money to dictate their speech. Steinem was instrumental in establishing the National Women's Political Caucus in July 1971. Among the 324 women from 27 states that she rounded up were Bella Abzug, Shirley Chisholm, and Betty Friedan. In 1972, they drafted a strategy that called for women to make up half of the political representatives, and it was accomplished by them. A whopping 40% of delegates were women in 1972, up from 13% in 1968. More than 220 women who had received caucus training had been elected to office by 1980. The National Women's Conference took place in Houston in November 1977, and Steinem was a part of its organization. 2,000 representatives from each state attended over the course of 4 days. After debating 26 different topics, they drafted a 20,000-word plan that pushed for the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment. 15,000 people, organized by Phyllis Schlafly, demonstrated outside the venue to oppose them. According to Steinem, the women served as a more effective representation than the majority of legislatures. The conference, which was broadcast live on C-SPAN, had a budget of $5 million. In terms of women's policy, it served as a manual for the Carter administration. A book by Steinem titled Outrageous Acts and Everyday Rebellions was published in 1983 October. The first month saw 100,000 copies sold. An article exposed the poor wages and intrusive medical checks she endured while working undercover as a Playboy bunny. Some have drawn parallels between Nazi gender policies and current limits on abortion. Many were really upset. Angry calls flooded the magazine's phones, and some libraries even banned the book. However, her ideas were introduced to a new generation when the book became a hit. Near a New York missile base, she became a member of the Women's Encampment in 1986, hoping for a peaceful future. 12,000 women from 12 different nations set up camp there for 6 weeks to protest nuclear weapons. At the beginning of his address, Steinem referred to nuclear weapons as the pinnacle of male aggression. 2 Danish lawmakers were among the more than 600 women taken into custody. As a result of their acts, the U.S. government was compelled to face challenging inquiries during global summits. Future treaties could not have been created without the demonstrations. In the same decade, Steinem emerged as a pivotal witness in pornographic matters before Congress. She spoke before the Senate in November 1983, elaborating on the connection between porn and actual acts of violence. Her remarks shaped a 1986 bill, which ultimately failed to pass, and the 1984 ME report. Nevertheless, her actions shifted the conversation among lawmakers around sexual exploitation. The President's Medal of Freedom was bestowed upon her in 2013 by Barack Obama. She had channeled her anger into action, he claimed. The medal was a fitting tribute to her many accomplishments. Anything done, even if it wasn't immediately noticed. People were surprised when Gloria Steinem got married at the age of 66 because she had a long reputation for saying, "A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle." She wed Christian Bale's father, David Bale, a businessman from South Africa, on September 3, 2000. The Oklahoma residence of Cherokee Chief Wilma Maniller served as the site of the ritual. This couple opted to refer to themselves as partners rather than husband and wife. They kept their money and residences in New York and Los Angeles apart. No, Gloria's last name remains the same. After battling brain lymphoma for nearly 3 years, David Bale died on December 30, 2003. Gloria went on to say that their marriage was the most joyful political event of her life. Many people couldn't believe she had tied the knot, but it proved her long-held belief that one's life is shaped by their choices, not their age. Gloria revealed a secret she had harbored for more than 8 decades in 2015. My Life on the Road, her memoir, detailed the sexual assaults she endured at the hands of individuals posing as family friends when she was about 9 years old. She and her father, an antique merchant, had a nomadic life during that period. Having gone through it, she now understands how subtle and unspoken acts of violence can be. She had spent decades advocating for women's rights, but until that moment, she had never publicly discussed her own suffering. She continued by saying that she was still terrified of the dark, so even as an adult, she slept with the lights on. The fights she spearheaded were about more than just politics, and her remarks made it clear. They were quite intimate. Despite the pain of remembering, she pushed for change because of what she had endured as a child. Gloria started a low-key relationship in the 80s that would continue for a decade. She had an affair with the first black man to head the Ford Foundation, Franklin A. Thomas. They met on civil rights initiatives and lived separately. She was from Manhattan and he was from Brooklyn. They never tied the knot. Mike Nichols, an actor, and Olympian Rafer Johnson were among her ex-boyfriends. Later in the decade, after she described her connection with media tycoon Mort Zuckerman as a gold-plated loneliness, their relationship became public knowledge. Gloria persevered and kept on traveling despite everything. For the most part of that year, she was out advocating for things she was passionate about. Franklin was even given the moniker Glow by Franklin's children, and she relaxed into her role as their father's daughter. During a period when conventional wisdom held that women should settle down, Gloria's story demonstrated that love knew no bounds. Being close to someone doesn't always require giving up your independence, as her partnerships demonstrated. Gloria detects a tumor in her breast in 1986 at the age of 52. The diagnosis was cancer. At the time, her treatment plan included a lumpectomy and 6 weeks of radiation, both of which were novel approaches. She was very forthcoming about the discomfort, exhaustion, and thinning of her hair. She wanted people to understand that even leaders fall ill and that it's all right to discuss it, even if most campaigners were perceived as courageous and unafraid. In addition to advocating for a bill that increased access to free cancer screenings for low-income women, she started giving talks at medical conferences. This bill was signed into law in 1990. Additionally, she oversaw the publication of real-life accounts from women who had undergone treatment in Ms. Magazine. Gloria persisted despite her illness. That was incorporated into her message. She remarked thereafter that her experience with cancer taught her the importance of self-care. Her health and will to fight were spared, she claimed, because of that lesson. Gloria published Revolution from Within in 1992. The first 150,000 copies sold out on a single day of its January release. The book was about 600 pages lengthy. For 9 weeks, it was the most popular book in the nation, according to the New York Times. Sales had surpassed 1 million units by year's end. Gloria stated in the book that women need to feel in themselves that they are deserving of political change for it to endure. The novel was both criticized and lauded. While some schools included it in their psychology-required reading, others categorized it more closely with feminist thought. Publishers began seeking out further works that combined healing with politics after seeing how successful it was, despite criticism. Sales of Gloria's book were more than that. Feminism and self-esteem were forever altered by it. An HBO film adaptation of Gloria's now-famous Playboy Exposed debuted in 1993. It was titled A Bunny's Tale, and it was based on her 1963 undercover career as a Playboy bunny. When it premiered on February 29th, the film, which featured Kirstie Alley, drew more than 3 million views. Using Gloria's actual notes, the screenplay was able to accurately replicate the bunny costumes from the 1960s. Playboy reported a 12% increase in club membership cancellations following its airing. Moreover, the tape was utilized by a government body as proof in a case involving workplace sexual harassment. The film served as an eye-opener for the younger generation that missed reading the archival piece. Not only did HBO play it every Easter weekend, but it also kept the narrative alive and made people chuckle. Gloria demonstrated that even the entertainment industry could join the movement for social justice. After decades of hushed discussion, Gloria finally spoke out about it in 2015. The Independent Research Service was an organization she had headed in the 50s. The group's funding had actually come from the CIA. In an effort to counter Soviet influence, the CIA funded student travel from 1958 to 1962. Aside from covering her trip expenses, Gloria claimed the agency never provided her with any editorial guidance. My Life on the Road, her memoir, detailed this, and it even included citations from old CIA documents that praised her abilities to win over enemies without resorting to violence. With the release of the book, the story went viral on the internet. Some thought she had been duped, while others thought she had made effective use of the system. People began to view her as an activist on a global scale, and her book sales skyrocketed as a result. She didn't try to hide the complicated truth. Gloria co-founded the Women's Media Center in New York with Robin Morgan and Jane Fonda on October 17, 2005. The empowerment and increased visibility of women in the media was their stated objective. With an initial investment of $3 million, they established a database named SheSource that provided information about qualified women who could be interviewed for news stories. A mere 22% of front-page stories were penned by women, according to their first major study. In 2015, that figure had increased to 38%. Campaigns that Gloria spearheaded succeeded in having networks issue an apology for sexist articles. 5 times between 2010 and 2014, CNN was forced to apologize live on television. In addition to launching a worldwide initiative concerning sexual assault in conflict zones, the Women's Media Center educated more than 12,000 women to speak out. Gloria saw this group as a means to achieve lasting change through her activism. Julie Tammauer began filming Steinem's biopic, The Glorias, in 2018. If it were just factual errors rather than artistic ones, Gloria would be happy to lend a hand. From the colors of the bus seats to the actual buttons used in the campaign, she evaluated 147 little aspects over the course of 2 years. Just hours before the terrible news of Kobe Bryant's death broke, the film had its premiere at the Sundance Film Festival on January 26, 2020. Regardless, it was viewed in over 200 countries by Amazon viewers and had a 77% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Gloria loved the part where Alicia Vikander staged a replica of the Women's Strike for Equality March from 1970, complete with 300 extras to represent the actual number of participants. The film nonetheless managed to reach over 1.8 million households in its first month online, despite CO ruining the theater premiere. Because of this, her tale was able to reach a new generation of young people all around the globe. Gloria, who is now 91 years old, delivered the concluding remarks at the Jubilee Conference in New York on April 12, 2025. Young activists, chefs, and writers numbered among the more than 1,200 who gathered to hear her speak. Feminism, she argued, must now incorporate climate justice as well, and she referred to it as the longest revolution. Women constitute 80% of those forced to flee their homes due to climate change, while only 15% of those in positions of power make decisions about the environment, she noted. The entire audience erupted in applause when she proclaimed, "Dance more. Joy is the most subversive act." Padma Lakshmi presented her with a personalized timeline detailing the accomplishments since the inception of Ms. Magazine in 1972 to the present day following her speech. After holding it up, Gloria remarked, "History isn't a straight line. It's a spiral we climb together." Her live-streamed speech went viral, with over 600,000 views in only 2 days. Her message has the power to touch people of all ages. In the wake of the June 24, 2022, overturn of Roe v. Wade, Gloria utilized her Instagram and former accounts as instruments of agitation. Despite residing in Manhattan most of the time, her voice was heard by millions. Within 3 days of the verdict, her pinned video had amassed 4.6 million views. Then she told them what to do next: raise money for abortion, lobby for legislation at the state level, and ask the courts to make reforms. To circumvent restrictions, she provided helpline numbers concealed beneath emojis. She posted a thread in May 2024 detailing how the number of maternal fatalities increased by 14% in states that outlawed abortion. She continued, "This is not theoretical, it's lethal." Her internet following has grown to 2.1 million, surpassing Ms. Magazine's audience size, she said. Without ever leaving her house, she is relentlessly driving the campaign ahead, translating online support into tangible change. Gloria revealed something that has been plaguing her ever since an emotional interview she gave in April 2025. Despite her prominence as a journalist at the time, she chose to remain silent about the sexual harassment she endured in the 1960s. She recounted the time a famous writer pinned her and attempted to kiss her, prompting her to bite his cheek in order to free herself. Fearing for her career, she refrained from speaking out at that time. Even more disheartening was her admission that renowned journalists had offered her employment in return for private meetings. Though she refrained from naming them, she did say that they were exposed in the 1990s. She demonstrated that even strong women experience moments of fear and silence by sharing the story at this time. Still, she proved that one should speak up at any age. If you want more video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe and press the bell icon. Thanks for watching.